Good evening and welcome back. Coronavirus is now endemic. It is essentially seasonal, just like any seasonal flu, rhinovirus or coronavirus that you would expect. You will see the rise and fall of cases and fatalities as time goes on. And in that case, of course, just like you see cases of flu being seasonal, you should see the same with the Wu flu that we're currently seeing. Of course, that isn't how it's being calculated. Instead, it is cumulative up until the current point and then never taking away these figures. So as Boris Johnson calls for resolve to fight coronavirus over winter, we should really be having a reset on the amount of cases that we have. Because of course you have the same with influenza throughout the year, that you will have some cases, but it is going to peak around the times when you have minimal heat, UV and maximal interactions with people, and there isn't enough heat or sunlight as the best disinfectant in order to kill off the viruses. So of course that is when it is going to peak, and that is why we have a so-called seasonal flu and the cases and fatalities peaking around those times. So of course we're going to see the same with this coronavirus, just like we see with all the other coronaviruses. Is this one a special coronavirus? If you exclude politically, then no. If you include politically, then yes. For what reason? Well, then that comes down to conspiracy theories, given that the average comorbidity rate is 2.8. That is that they have almost three other things that they are going to die of very soon, other than the Wu flu, and also that the average age of death is beyond the average life expectancy anyway. Then you've got to be thinking, it's not going to be such a big issue. And then when you see so many people that are asymptomatic, that apparently is a concern, that they're saying, hey, if you get any symptoms, get tested because you might have the Wu flu without realizing that you've got it, and therefore you're going to be infecting other people. And then you might be thinking, oh, wow, as in so many of us have it, but we don't have any symptoms. Hang on. Is this really such a problem then? If so many of us are asymptomatic, that could possibly be a problem. It seems like this Wu flu isn't such a concern. But apparently not. Time for the tinfoil hats again. So, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called on the public to summon the discipline and the resolve to follow the new coronavirus rules announced on Tuesday. And, as I said previously, at this point we're basically thinking, how about no? You've already screwed us over. We've already tried a lockdown based on false data and very incorrect predictions from a very fallible individual of so-called Professor Lockdown, who doesn't follow the lockdown rules himself, and that's why he's resigned from Sage. But seeing as that's very unreliable and shouldn't have been followed in the first place, like we've seen in Sweden, and now we see that the lockdown has been useless, given that whenever you end it, you're going to have an increase in cases. Not such an increase in deaths, though, because it isn't that fatal. Then, no, we don't trust you, we do not think you know what you're talking about, and therefore we do not wish to oblige you in what you're requiring of us. So, no. We've got discipline and the resolve, but it isn't to go along with what you've said, it is to maintain our individual liberties. That is where our discipline and our resolve lies. Boris Johnson, for trying to enact the British spirit and wartime spirit, I don't think you quite understand what you're talking about. The idea is that we would not kowtow to authoritarians and socialism. And yet, what you're suggesting is authoritarianism telling us what to do, and socialism because of state-sanctioned welfare, and then saying what businesses can and can't continue under what regulations. So, if you're trying to enact British spirit, don't try to enact it when you're going along with policies that run counter to the British spirit. That's never going to work. Or you don't understand what you're talking about and you're just trying to say niceties in order to win people over like a con artist. I don't think you're like that, Boris Johnson, but you're treading a very fine line. So in a television broadcast of the country, he warned the government may go further if people do not stick to them. Yeah, we're very much against socialism over here. Mr. Johnson said while the vast majority have complied with the measure so far, there have been too many breaches. Or not enough. Maybe if you think there have been too many, you're making a mistake. Have you considered that? Have you maybe thought, and I know this is a radical thought for governments, but the government might be doing something incorrect. What a radical thought, that the government might be wrong. Yes, all you public servants may not be serving the public as you're set out to do and legally obliged to do so. So if you've got so many breaches, you might be thinking, ooh, maybe we're making a mistake. Similar to the war on drugs, as it happens. New restrictions were announced across the UK earlier, with Mr Johnson warning rules could last for up to 6 months. Bullshit. In England, rules on face coverings have been expanded, and the number of people allowed at weddings has been halved. We can't have people interacting, especially not being married. Christ, they might start families. We don't want that. Pubs, restaurants and other hospitality venues will have to close by 10 p.m. No chance. While the fines of breaking the rules will also increase to £200 on the first offence. Hospitality venues will also have to close early in Scotland and Wales, but Scotland has gone further, of course she has, banning people from visiting other people's homes. Northern Ireland has already banned households mixing indoors. Friends are overrated, apparently, and as I've said before, that the social media studies have shown that just interacting online isn't nearly as beneficial for your health and well-being as interacting in person. Well, yeah, but that's all you're allowed to do now. So yeah, we know that that's very detrimental to health, but that's all you're allowed to do. Tinfoil hats are coming. It comes as the number of UK cases, which doesn't matter, rose by 4,926 on Tuesday, government figures showed, with deaths increasing by 37. So fewer than 1%? Oh, but there's a 2-week lag. How convenient. But yeah, and what are these deaths? Are these definitely from COVID? Are these just of people who have been tested positive for the Wu flu at the same time? Or are these just for people who have had flu-like symptoms? Because there's a great discrepancy there. Is it just tested positive and within a month? Is that what it is? That seems to be the new standard, and deaths from COVID seems to have dropped astoundingly. Funny that. You're not going to be covering that though, are you? Just, yeah, so it seems like now that we've changed the definition for deaths by COVID, several thousand deaths have been reduced. Let's just skip over that. Now, back to the fear porn. Brilliant. What's the reasoning for this? Are you just hoping that people will stay inside and then click on your sites in order to garner you more traffic and ad revenue? Is that the idea? But they're saying can't just lock up elderly. Speaking on Tuesday evening, Mr Johnson explained the new measures, saying they were robust but proportionate. And to those who say we don't need this stuff and we should leave people to take their own risks, I say these risks are not our own. But they are. The tragic reality of having COVID is that your mild cough can be someone else's death knell. And as for the suggestion we should simply lock up the elderly and the vulnerable, with all the suffering that would entail, I must tell you that this is just not realistic, because if you let the virus rip through the rest of the population, it would inevitably find its way through to the elderly as well, and in much greater numbers. Hang on. So, if we say that the elderly or the vulnerable should take responsibility for themselves and self-isolate, they're still going to get the virus, because it's going to affect people who self-isolate, right? Whereas if everybody self-isolates, it's not going to affect them? Wow! Who knew that the Wu flu was so politically aware? This is utter bullshit, isn't it? Yes. This is utter trite. What the fuck is he on about? It just doesn't make sense even at a moment's glance. Because you're either saying self-isolating stops the spread, means you won't get it. Or you're saying self-isolating doesn't stop the spread and you will still get it. Which is it? From what you're saying here, it's still going to grip through and affect them. In which case, there is no bloody point to lockdown because you're still going to get it. So, let's not bother then. Why would you ruin people's lives for no reason? Or is it just to get them to rely more on the government as apparently the saviour? Just so you can get more power? Because for you trying to trade in power, you're going to lose your quality of life. Would you like to be the ruler of Venezuela? Because your quality of life is going to be significantly worse than it is over here. Just like all of you lovely listeners, your quality of life is going to be better than royalty just a few hundred years ago. Due to vast, tremendous, humongous technological innovation, including medicines. So, yeah, just going for the power isn't such a good idea. But that's his point. Bloody hell, as I've said before, you've got a conservative majority. What the fuck are you playing on? But Mr. Johnson said he was deeply spiritually reluctant to infringe on anyone's freedom. Bullshit. But added, unless we take action, the risk is that we will have to go for tougher measures later. No, it isn't. You've just counteracted your previous point. Yeah, we don't want to do this, but if we don't limit your freedom, we're going to have to limit it more. How about you don't do it at all? If people don't follow the rules we have set out, then we must reserve the right to go further. No. You just say, seems like you guys don't want to do it. You're going to be responsible for your own actions. I'm not going to take care of you because you've made your decision. Cool. Okay. Yep, that's our decision. Bye-bye. More police will be put on the streets and the army will be used as backup if need be, he said. Yeah, you can have riots and protests, tearing down statues, arson, all that. That's perfectly fine because they're encouraging black criminals. But if you try and go for individual freedom because you don't want to be muddled and instead you want to be able to interact with your friends, then the army needs to be called in. Yeah. You can destroy British culture and attack police as long as it's for the sake of criminals who are black. But if you want your individual freedom and not hurt anybody, not destroy British culture, and instead have a mutually beneficial, agreeable time, the army's going to be called on you. Seems to be a great disconnect here, Mr. BoJo. Very much so. What are you on? But he goes on. If we follow these simple rules together, we will get through this winter together, he added. There are unquestionably difficult months to come, only if you keep getting in the fucking way, we'd be doing just fine. And the fight against COVID is by no means over. It is. Now it's the fight against government. I have no doubt, however, that there are great days ahead when you get out of the fucking way. But now is the time for us all to summon the discipline and the resolve, and the spirit of togetherness will carry us through. Against government intervention. Oh, and the 5th of November is getting close, isn't it? I hope you got your fireworks ready. In a statement on Tuesday evening, Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said, in a global pandemic of a virus with as yet no vaccine, we simply can't have 100% normality. No country can, so we must choose our priorities. Well, there's a global pandemic of rhinovirus, as in the common cold. That is global. It's a pandemic. Almost everybody's affected. There's no vaccine, because it's so quickly mutating. But we can have a 100% normality. So, what are you on? She said that although today must feel like a step backwards, the country is in a much stronger position than in the spring. On what metric? None at all. Unless you mean that now that we know, most definitely, coronavirus is not an issue, and that knowledge puts us in a better position, then yes. But then acting detrimentally on that knowledge puts you in a much, much worse position. Instead of, just cutting your bets and playing it safe, you're now just going against all the new knowledge that you have. So you're in a significantly worse position, and you're just encouraging authoritarianism. Great job. She says, it won't last forever, and one day, hopefully soon, we will be looking back on it, not living through it. That's up to you. Whenever you want, just go with, do what you want to do. And she added, I will never find the words to thank all of you enough for the enormous sacrifices you have made so far, and I'm sorry to be asking for more. No, you're fucking not. No, not at all. Not at all. What you're actually saying is, good job, you live in fear. I am your saviour. Vote for me forever. I will be your dictator for life. That's what you're saying. Meanwhile, Wales First Minister Mark Drakeford said, in the weeks and months ahead of us, there was a very real possibility we could see coronavirus regain a foothold in our local communities, towns and cities. None of us wants to see that happen again. At this point, we really don't give a shit. And at this point, I really can't go on. I hope you understand that message, that they're just going to keep beating the same old bloody drum, even though we know it's utter bullshit. We've already gone through the lockdown. It's been useless. We've all suffered because of it, and none of us are willing to face another one. So as soon as they try that, of course you're going to have more breaches. Over half of the people who have been fined haven't paid it, because of course they bloody won't. So, hey, the lawyers are going to have a field day when it comes to going against people's human rights. But to everybody else, stay safe, stay sane, under all this gaslighting. And as always, until next time, have a good one.